If you haven't done it yet, the traditional way of making canvas is pretty straightforward. You take stretcher bars, we have pre-made ones, and then you put them into basic rectangle shape, cut your canvas to the size, and then pull it tight if it's a regular duck canvas, and then staple that down. Of course, folding the canvas back at the corners. I'm going to show you how to stretch a canvas. It's really not that hard. I'm going to show you first how to use these stretcher bars, or strips as they're sometimes called, to do a canvas, and then I'll show you a different method as well. When you pick out these bars, make sure you have 2 pairs of the same size, so that you have at least a rectangle. I actually have 4 of the same because I'm going to make a square for this example here. And you want to be careful. These aren't really made to be high quality, so they're going to have a lot of splinters on them. Try to be careful when you're handling them. And then all you got to do really is just kind of push them together at the corners here. All right, and you got to use your muscles. It can be kind of hard to fit them in there. If you're having trouble, have a friend kind of get them in there for you initially, and then you can do the rest. Okay. Okay. Once you got them in, even if you don't have them in all the way, some things you can do to kind of get them in order. You can use a mallet. We have a couple of mallets from the other room, or a hammer, and you can kind of just use that to kind of hammer it in place, or correct it. So all right, not bad. Okay, and you can also use the door frame to square it. Okay. So when you use the door frame to square it, it's not hard. You just got to kind of shove it up in the corner here, okay? And because the door frame's 90 degrees, you can actually square it off really well, okay? So just kind of shove it in there and keep rotating. Keep shoving it in there. All right? You don't want to see any gaps between the actual wooden frame and the metal of the doorway. If you do see a gap, it means it's not square, and you want it to be square. All right, so when you've got your frame all squared off, I don't think I have the actual stretcher little triangle things to go in these gaps right here. If I do find them, I'll give them to you, and you can just shove those in the corner to kind of keep this in place. But when you've got this kind of figured out and it's how you want it, you're going to take a staple gun and you're going to staple 1, 2, or 3 times along this seam right here where the 2 pieces of wood meet. Okay, so that's not hard. If you've never used a staple gun before, it can be kind of hard. If you need to, use 2 hands, but make sure you got it lined up before you squeeze. Okay. And again, if you're having trouble, you can work with a partner, and they can kind of help you with the stapling part, and you can do most of the other parts of the assembly. Okay, so I've got it all stapled. You can kind of see how they're attached right there. They need to be attached in all 4 corners, all right? So now I'm ready to get some canvas on this, and the canvas part's not too hard, actually. You just got to make sure you have enough. So I have a big old roll of canvas here. You just need to unroll however much you need. All right, and we don't need a lot. Ours is pretty small, okay? So you want enough canvas to wrap around the edge and staple down. If you want to staple it from the side, you can, but I kind of like the look of it being stapled at the back better. And you don't need too much. I just need to be able to wrap around the edge here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the corner here, make sure I have enough in all directions. All right, and I probably need, judging by this here, about the same amount right there. So you can eyeball it. You can actually measure it out and draw it with a pencil. Like, take your pencil here and just sort of like kind of give yourself a rough guesstimate. But once you've got it, you're going to cut it out, okay? And then you're going to stretch it around the edge. Now, when you do cut out canvas, I want you to keep it in the corner and I want you to go canvas, canvas, canvas. Don't do it diagonally. Don't cut it out of the center. Don't keep cutting out of it. Make sure you go sequentially here so that you don't actually ruin the canvas or waste the canvas. You waste the canvas when you kind of cut out weird shapes or don't cut square with the edges here. Okay. All right, so we got plenty of canvas right here. Make sure you roll this back up when you're done with it and set it aside. Okay, now comes kind of the tough part. People have a lot of problems with this when they do it. I don't know why either, because it's not too hard. You should have enough canvas to wrap around the sides, so just double check. If it's not centered, make sure you center it. You should have the same amount fold over from all directions, okay? So when you know you've got the right, your canvas and your frame centered here, you're going to use two tools. I'm going to do it alone. If you need to do this with a partner, where your partner kind of pulls the canvas in and you do the staples or the other way around, that's okay. I'm able to do it alone because I've done it a billion times. And I highly recommend you actually do use these. These are stretcher pliers. They have a big flat, broad edge here with little teeth in it to kind of help grip the canvas and bring it in. They also have this little bar here to act as kind of a counterweight to kind of help you stretch it. If you're not comfortable using these, just make sure you use your hands and make sure you get a good firm grip and really pull in so that you get it nice and tight. With regular cotton duck canvas, okay, made out of cotton, you need to pull it tight. If you're using linen, there's a whole other separate set of concerns, and it's not as stretchy as cotton canvas, so you don't need to worry about it getting tight. For this, though, you do need to make sure it's tight. Now, when you staple, you're going to start in the middle, and you're going to go opposite each other, okay? And then you're just going to go around in a circle. So middle, opposite, middle, okay? And then to the side, opposite, to the side, opposite, okay? And keep going and going and going. So, just kind of watch me here. I'm going to get it started here. Do a staple in the middle. Flip it around, okay? And I'm going to use the pliers to pull this direction with my left hand, okay? And I'm going to staple with my right. Okay? Same thing here. Pull with the pliers in my left hand. And I don't want to pull too tight so that I don't have enough on this side. Looks like I have plenty on this side, so I'm good. Staple. Okay. And when you get kind of tight here, what you can do is you can actually pull it into your hip or your body right here. Okay, so that you have a good counterweight to when you're pulling in. Alright, so now I got my first 4 staples. It's nice and tight. You can kind of feel it kind of get tight in the center right here. You should feel tight in here. If you didn't pull it hard enough to get it a little bit tight in the center, just pull the staples back up or pull them out with the screwdriver and re-stretch it, okay? Now I'm going to start, because I'm tight here, I'm good. I'm going to start pulling and stapling either side of this staple here, okay? So same setup. Just get your wrench on there, pull it tight. And now, actually, what you can do, instead of pulling in, you can also pull out to the side, toward the corner a little bit, okay? So pull down. Okay, pull down and out. All right? And you want to keep your staples about 1 inch to 1.5 inches apart, okay? You don't need to get any closer, really, and you don't want to get too far apart, because if you get too far apart, you're going to have these weird gaps, and you might not pull it tight enough, and then you'll have a stupid little wrinkle, and it just looks bad. Okay, so since I did 2 on this side, I got to do 2 on this side, opposite. All right, same thing. All right, 2 opposite, okay? So I'm good on these 2 sides. Now I'm going to go here and here, all right? Getting nice and tight in the middle, that's what you want. Okay, and then essentially you keep doing the same thing until you reach the end. All right, so I'm going to actually kind of cut to that part real quick here. Okay, I've stapled all the way to my edge here. Okay, they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches apart. And when you get toward the end here, you want to make sure you have at least one staple that's pretty close to the end. Okay, so this one was pulled really tightly, and it's pretty close to the edge here. I have the same thing on this side as well. You can see there's one last staple that's really close to the edge. You want to make sure that you pull this corner nice and tight on this edge and this edge right here before you pull the corner down and staple that in place, okay? If you don't do that, you're going to get little weird wrinkles on the corners here, and you don't want that, okay? So let's actually give this side, since it seems to be bunching up here, one last staple, and then I'll show you how to pull the corners back. There's 2 different styles, okay? The first style is kind of the most elegant solution. You're just going to pull back real tight, and you're just going to pull that cloth flat, all right? Okay, should look like this. There's no triangle here, there's no triangle here, it's just pulled flat along this corner, all right? The other way to do it is to pull it kind of flat like a little triangle here, like a fold almost, and have this kind of fold on the edge right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty much, I don't know, like both options are viable. I've since started pulling mine flat like this to kind of hide my edges, but when I started out, I just did the traditional fold back. So I'll do the fold back one for this right here. And all you got to do at the end on the corner here is really pull tight, no matter which method you use, pull tight, and just staple down the rest of that extra cloth, okay? So I stapled down the rest of the cloth, and I pulled it tight like a corner there. You can kind of see the little shadow there. I'll try the other method on this end here. For this second method, you really got to pull super hard if you want it to look good. All right, so there's the second method. You can kind of see there's no fold here, there's no fold here. It's just pulled tight and a little bunch in the back there, okay? And that looks nice and clean and finished when you get it done right. I've got a couple of wrinkles there. You don't really want that, but whatever. This is just an example. So once you've got all of these pulled back, you're going to want to gesso it. Now, when you gesso it, it'll probably wind up looking, well, here's the finished one right here. This didn't do a very good job. You can see they didn't calculate how much canvas they needed, and their staples are all over the place. Regardless of that, the front's actually not too bad. Here's one that's been gessoed, okay, and it's actually got a blue ground on it. So once they gessoed it, they just took some plain old blue and got it on there first. And I don't know how many coats they did, but it looks like, yeah, they did enough coats. The way you check to see if you have enough coats is to kind of hold it up to the light. And what you shouldn't see is you shouldn't see little sparkles of light coming through the canvas there. If you do see any holes, it means you haven't put enough layers of gesso on there and it's not sealed. And what will happen is if you paint on it with oil paint or acrylic, that paint will kind of seep through the canvas and it'll come out the back. And especially with oil paint, that'll eat away at the canvas and eventually it'll disintegrate and sort of fall apart, which isn't something you want if you want to keep it forever. So yeah, make sure you put enough coats on there. And then how smooth this is totally up to you. If you put enough coats on there and you maybe add some joint compound or some plaster and kind of sand it real smooth after like 3 or 4 coats, you might get a much smoother texture. I personally like it to be a little bit textured, but I've since gotten sick of it and moved on to linen. Make sure once you've got this kind of all stretched and ready to go that you put your name on it, and then make sure it's set somewhere nice and safe to dry. Put a sign next to it that says, hey, this gesso's wet, it's going to take, you know, 45 minutes, an hour to dry, so please don't touch it, or something like that. Especially when you put on multiple coats within one class period, it's going to stay wet for quite a while. Really make sure that you get the sides sealed, and when you get to these corners here, take your brush and really shove that gesso down in there. Don't, especially if you do this corner method here where it's folded over like a little triangle, don't let that be kind of left undone. Just really shove it down in there. You can put gesso on the back where there is a little bit of extra if you want. That makes it easier to kind of unwrap if you want, but for the most part, make sure you get the front and make sure you get all the sides, okay? When you're all done, please clean out the brushes. Please put any of these tools back. If you have anything laying out, somebody else is going to use it, so I don't want that to happen. If you're going to make a canvas and I see you leave stuff out, I'm not going to let you make another one if you want to. I need you to put this stuff away, please. These are kind of not my most favorite tools to see other students using. So be very careful with that. This method here that I'm going to show you how to do is the way that I make my canvases. It's kind of not very neat. You're cutting wood. I don't have a very good sense of craftsmanship, so sometimes when I cut, my cuts aren't perfect. But it gets the job done, and it actually makes deeper canvases. And you can make large canvases with this. Your only limit is how long the wood actually is. The stretcher bars that we have in class are kind of limited to what I can buy them at. And I only buy them up to about 18 inches. After that, they get super expensive. This, I have no problem buying and cutting to any length, really. It's a lot cheaper, and you can get kind of any size you want. Your only limit being the canvas itself. The canvas is about, I think, 4 or so feet wide, so you can't go larger than that. Right now I'm going to show you how to attach these together. These are in a box in the closet. If you want to make this kind of canvas, I got quite a few pre-cut ready to go. Each one should have their inches on it labeled. Look around and maybe have a tape measure with you in case they aren't labeled. Again, like the other canvas you saw stretch, you need 2 pairs of the same size bar. I got 2 12-inchers and I believe 2 15-inch bars, so we can make a rectangle canvas with this. And to attach them, instead of using like the pre-made stretcher bars that just go together right like that, you're going to use a screwdriver, okay? So you're going to have to drill some holes and screw some screws. If you're really comfortable drilling just regular old screws into wood, you don't have to pre-drill the holes, but I'm going to pre-drill the holes just to kind of help you along and show you how to do it. Maybe make it easier for you. So the setup I recommend you use is we've got some clamps. Set has some clamps, and you're going to want to clamp it to the end of a table here, okay? So these 2 15-inchers actually match up pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have those on the inside. And then the 12-inchers, since they don't really match up all that well, I'm going to have them on the outside. So I don't know if you can see the setup here, but these are on the inside and they'll kind of go like that, all right? Instead of the other way around with, the 15 inches on the outside like this, okay? I'm going to include them inside because I believe these 12, one's a little bit, just a hair longer than the other. So I can get rid of that by keeping them on the outside. Now, another thing. These are also not flush with each other. Sometimes they're a little bit thicker or thinner. I take 1x4s and I split them up the middle. So sometimes one board is a little bit thicker than the other one. And that's okay. You just got to make sure that when you screw them together, you have one flat side. The back of the canvas can have a little bit off. It can be, one side can be a little bit higher than the other. Nobody's going to see the back, so it doesn't really matter. So let's set this up here. Okay, I'm going to bring it right onto the corner of my table here, and I'm going to use a little clamp here. These aren't the best clamps. I'll try to get some other ones that'll work a little bit better. But essentially, you're going to clamp it to the table here to keep it in place. For those of you who've never used power tools before, this helps a lot. Keeps everything in place. Make sure it stays where it's supposed to while you're doing what you're doing. So once you got it in place, what you want to look to do is keep this flush right here. Keep it nice and lined up, okay? So when I've got that lined up, I can tighten that, and I'm going to drill 2 holes and use 2 screws, okay? Another thing you got to keep in mind is that this is the back side. So if you're having trouble remembering that, before you go to start screwing in other pieces, just maybe make an X on those bars to tell yourself that, okay, this is the back, this needs to be facing up when I screw anything into it. So now I'm ready to drill my holes. I've got this drill right here. It's got a pretty small bit in it. You don't want to make it too large, otherwise the threads on the screws aren't going to catch the wood, okay? So to pre-drill a hole, just go in and out, and when you go in, keep the drill running as you go out so that it comes out a little bit better. Okay, not hard, right? And then I'm going to get some screws here. All right, these are about, what, 1 5/8, so about 1.5 inches or so, okay? Just put them on your screwdriver in here and screw them in. You don't want to go too far in, otherwise you might split the wood. So be careful of that. There we go, perfect. All right. Alright, so we've got that screwed in there. Again, this is flush, okay? And you can kind of see here, this piece of wood is a little bit higher than this one. That's okay, it's going to go on the back, right? So when I screw the next one in, I want to make sure that this is the top and that whatever sticks out up above this board right here is in the back of my canvas. When I stretch it, I'll stretch the canvas over this side, okay? Because this side's all flat. Now, the other advantage to this is it's pretty stable. You don't have to do a cross beam at all until you get into the larger sizes. So if you really want to do something that's 3 foot by 2 foot, you're probably going to want a stretcher bar that goes across the middle. And all you need for that is to cut a precise piece to kind of go in the middle there. And that's not too hard. I'm not going to demonstrate how to screw the rest of these in. But when you're all done, you can stretch this just like normal. You're going to need a lot more canvas because you're going to stretch around this side, and around back. But you have a lot less space to staple. This is a lot narrower than the stretcher bars. So make sure you have enough to wrap around, but also make sure that you staple directly over the board. There's not this giant wide area to staple on. The other advantage of these is because they look deep, they look really good on a wall. And you don't have to frame them really. You just got to paint the edges black or something like that to kind of finish them up. Some artists leave it white and then they kind of leave the paint splatter all along the edge, and that's fine, that looks cool. But I actually like these deeper canvases, and again, you can control the size. So if you don't like 12 by 15 inches, we can cut them to any size you want, and you can make 15.5 by 10 if you want. That's the advantage of these over the stretcher bars in there, the pre-cut ones. This is always an option open to you. You don't have to use this method, and I'm not going to force you to. This is just for people who want to make something larger and actually want to play around with some tools some more, okay? When you're all done, make sure you put every single tool away. Again, I can't stress this enough. If you're going to get all this stuff out, you got to put it away, okay? These drills are brand spanking new almost, and I don't want to lose the privilege of having them. So put them away, put the battery on the charger if it's running out, and make sure you take the drill bits out of them and put those back where you got them. All right?